then the other thing that a book does for you that a blog post will not is it elevates you. I would like to have people say, well, what do you want the book to do for you? We talk about what do you want it to do for the readers, but then what do you want it to do for you? So when you are a book author, and you want to come on, let's say, a podcast such as yours, you can't come on your podcast and just talk about your business, right? Because that seems like you're selling something. But when you have a book and you can talk about the book and you can talk about those topics and how that book helps people, automatically it raises you from being a salesperson to being an educator. You're educating people about your particular topic. So for the author, if you want to be a paid speaker, or if you want to do workshops, or if you want to become guests on shows and podcasts, that book then becomes an entry point to all of those things.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Let's Talk, the podcast for human skills and mindset. Today, we would talk about books. Books has a pretty profound impact in my life as well. And I think there are a lot of people who can resonate to that idea. And the reason is books can have a different role in your life. Sometimes they are motivators. They are teachers. They provide those kind of aspects or those thought process which you have never even envisioned in your life. At the same time, it can also cultivate some analytical skills. Some people really would like to read books because they give some kind of mindfulness experience as well. So there are a lot of things which books provide. Now, if you're wondering why we are discussing about books, the reason is that our today's guest, she is an author, a book coach, and has pretty vast experience, approximately around 25 years of experience in technology. And then she moved to become an author and then write books around different nonfiction, specifically around that. And at the same time, she started coaching the aspiring authors as well. Linda Griffin, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Sarv. I'm so happy to be here.
Yeah, likewise. I was very intrigued when I read through about that you used to work in IBM, and then and again, I would like to know more about the story, how you get into what you are today.
Yeah,
I was like, yeah, this is one thing which most of the folks may not have that much information around. Like people like to read books, and I was reading somewhere that throughout the world, only 0.01% of the people write books, or they're author of different books out there, right? So it's a very small, but there are a lot of people who must be aspiring. They have stories around, and that is something which we will expand that. But before getting into that part, Linda, can you just help us walk through what's your journey becoming an author, and why exactly it happens, or anything you would like to shed to our viewers?
Yes, sure. I would love to share my journey, and I like to share that because the people that I work with are not professional writers. I'm not a professional writer either, and that's one of the intimidating things when people start to think about writing a book. So I like to tell my story because I said I'm the farthest away from a book writer that you can get, right? I was a math major in college, and as you said, I joined a technology company and worked there for my entire corporate career. And I always thought of myself as a bits and bytes person. That's what I like to say. I like puzzles, and I I was a programmer at one point, so I like to figure things out and all of that left brain stuff, right? And I did a little bit of writing, because you do have to do some writing with, technical papers and things like that as you're in a technology business, but not really a
Mhm.
lot. And I loved that job. Loved it, loved it, loved it. I had many different positions. Yeah, I worked on databases for a while. I worked in disaster recovery for a while. So it was really a wonderful career. But when I decided to leave my corporate job and kind of strike out on my own, at that point I was in a marketing position, and I thought, okay, what business could I start where I could use my skills? And I opened a marketing company, and I was working with small business owners. And it was great because my goal was to take the big marketing strategies that I learned in corporate and apply those to small businesses and kind of move them forward in their businesses. And it was great. But the problem with that is that every time I got a new client, I had to learn a new language. So I had to learn office products one week, and then I had to learn accounting the next week. And I thought, okay, Linda, you really need to specialize. That's what people tell you. You need to find a niche that you enjoy and specialize in that. And one of my hobbies is traveling. I love to travel. And I thought, oh, let me focus on the travel and hospitality industry. And I specifically picked a niche within travel and hospitality, and that was the bed and breakfast industry. Now, I didn't have any clients in the bed and breakfast industry at that time, and I was working with a business coach, and he said, well, the best way to establish credibility in a marketplace is to be a book author. And I was like, oh, okay, that's a really great idea. I think I want to do that. Well, the bed and breakfast industry had a big national conference every year in January. And I thought, okay, I'm going to launch my book at that conference. A great way to introduce myself to the industry. The only problem was when I made this statement, it was October, and the conference was in January of the following year.
Wow.
And I did not know what I was getting myself into when I said I was going to write a book, right? So I knew I couldn't get a traditional publishing contract because it would take too long to do that. I'd have to get an agent and you go through the process. So I knew I had to self-publish, but I didn't know anything about publishing. And I really immersed myself trial by fire. I read everything I could possibly read. I took a couple of online courses to try to get myself in a position where I could self-publish. And I like to say that the ink was still wet on the books when I got to the conference, but I did launch the book at the conference, and that book opened so many doors for me because it allowed me to establish credibility in that industry. And I got speaking engagements. My book was added to the curriculum for several of the state bed and breakfast associations. So it was really a wonderful experience for me. And around that time, as you mentioned, people started asking me how I did it, right? Because most people have a book in them somewhere. And I realized that I could really help provide a service to people who wanted to write a book. And that started my journey to becoming a book coach.
Wow, that's great. This is one of the testimonials that you mentioned. After
Yeah,
spending so many years.
you're absolutely right. I do believe that. And for me, it took a while to settle on this. I eventually did pivot my entire business, but before that, I tried different things. And I think we all have a lot of skills, and we don't always know which ones of those skills we want to hone in on and make that the thing that we're known for, right? And so I believe it's totally okay to experiment, to try some things. My friends would laugh at me because when I first started my business, I did a little bit of coaching for a while, and I did some other things. And, it took a while for me to figure out what was the thing that I wanted to be known for. And as you said, there's no time frame, there's no time limit on it. You just have to explore and figure out. When I first started my business, I never even knew there was a thing called a book coach, right? So it was not something that I could even think about. But over time, as I exposed myself to different things and as I learned more, then this became an opportunity for me.
Exactly. And the one thing which I just missed out to mention is that you have 3 books, which are one is Maximum Occupancy, which I think mentions about all the bread and breakfast industry, and
Yes.
and the other one is Book Smart. And I just forgot what that Book Smart. I think it's all about the way how you write a book. Is that correct?
Yes. It's my process, the process that I use with my private clients. So if you wanted to do it yourself, you could go through that book in a step-by-step process.
Perfect. And the third one is the Book Smarts Planner, which is more kind of, again, the sequential way of getting acquainted of what are the different processes. And this is, again, I think the first 2, just to make sure, we'll put all the information in the description below. However, the third one is available only on your website, which is expertauthor411.com. Is that correct?
That's right. Yes, absolutely.
Okay. So I'm intrigued what 411 is all about.
Well, that's a bit of old school, right? Because 411 used to be the number for information back when we had the rotary dial phones, right? And so I called it Expert Author 411 because it's all the information people need to know to get their books written and published.
Perfect. That's great.
And it has numbers in it, right? So I'm still a numbers person.
Yes, exactly. So you mentioned about in your journey that you had a business coach. And this is something I would like to expand a bit about, having a coach or mentors in your life. Sometimes people, and specifically those people who are in the right direction, they think that everything is going fine and everything is going as per the expectation. They always wonder, like, do I still need a coach or not? Even though like a business coach or a personal coach or any kind of a motivational coach. What's your perspective of having a coach in your life, and why is it important?
Yes, I believe a coach is really important. And I first think about it the way that professional athletes do, right? All of the top level athletes have coaches. They have incredible skill. Some of them have incredible success, but they still have a coach, because that outside objective person can either see things in you that you don't see yourself, or they can push you to expand upon skills that you already have. So for me, having a business coach is really important. And I've had several over the course of my career, because I also believe that you pull in a coach for a specific reason or a specific time in your life, right? The first coach that I had was someone who helped me get my business started, right? Because I didn't know how to create a small business. So how to put all the processes together to do that. So I had a coach who specialized in that. And once I learned what I needed to learn, then that coach was not really effective for me anymore. So I moved to a different coach who was more of a mindset coach to talk about, well, how big do you want to grow your business? And if you want it to be a certain size, what are the things that you need to do? Sometimes, I have a marketing background, so I didn't need a marketing coach, but many business owners need a marketing coach because their forte is the thing that they do, right? Whether they're a accountant or a baker or whatever they are, but their forte is not marketing, so they don't have those skills. So having a coach that could come in and help them set up their marketing program and get that up and running would be a great coach for them. So I always like to say, look at where you want to grow, and don't look at it as something that's lacking, but something that will accelerate your results. That's really what a coach does. They accelerate your results. And even myself as a book coach, as I mentioned to you, all the information you need to publish is out there on the internet, and you can look it up yourself, right? But having a coach who can accelerate that, who already knows all of the steps that you need to walk through, and then can help you walk through them, that's the value that a coach brings.
Exactly. That's the right thing. I think I like the way what you mentioned about the coach help you to accelerate your vision or your cause. And obviously it's very important to know that what you are really looking for.
Yes.
And this is something which I always mention to people and try to inculcate, that spend your time with yourself as well. Because if you aren't aware of what you would like, you may not be able to propagate. As Oprah Winfrey, she mentioned that you always have to be pretty full within yourself. Then only you will try to provide that an opportunity or any kind of a giving to other people. If you are itself is not content or not happy, you may not be able to propagate the same thing.
That's right.
I think in terms of coaching as well. And as you mentioned that you keep on trying having different coaches, and again, you're trying different things, which is also pretty important in that perspective. So coming to that, the part of the coach, there are a lot of people who would like to write a book. Now, help us understand that these days in the digital world, people are writing a lot of blogs, articles. Why would they go with a book rather? I mean, if I just try to become a devil's advocate, I'm for example, if I'm a good writer in terms of writing blogs and articles, and how do I think about, do I need to write a book, or why should I need to write a book?
Well, that's actually an excellent question, Sarb. That is one of the 3 questions that I have people answer when I start working with them. The first question is your who. Who are you writing the book for specifically? What is your target audience? Who is the person that will benefit the most from reading your book? Then the next question is your what? What is it that you want to help that reader learn? Right? What specifically? And you mentioned in today's environment, when we have YouTube and we have a lot of things where we get quick hits, we have quick blog posts and things like that. People don't really want to read a 300-page book anymore. That's not where it's at. They want to read a book that solves a specific problem. Like in my first book with the bed and breakfast industry, they have a lot of business in the summertime, what they call their high season. And in their low season, in the wintertime, they have very few guests. And so one of their big problems is, in their terminology, how do I put heads in beds, right? And so my book was about how to put heads in beds in every season, right? So it was a specific problem of how do you get people to book your bed and breakfast in the low season. So that's the kind of book that people want to read now. They have a problem that they want to solve, and we should be writing books that help them solve that problem. Now, to go back to your question of, if I have a lot of blog posts, and a lot of people do, why should I write a book? Well, because people read your blog post one at a time. And a blog post that you wrote, let's say a year ago, that may still have great information, they're never going to see that unless you somehow drive them to that blog post. And it's in bits and pieces. So having everything in one place is a great way for someone to start at the beginning and go all the way through. Or even if you have different topics, having them all in one place and they can just scroll the table of contents and then find the chapter that they want easily and then go to that information. It's interesting that you mentioned blog posts, because some people do start with their blog posts. If all of their blog posts are about a specific topic, then you can use those as a basis for your book. Now, you will have to restructure them, because single blog posts and writing a cohesive book are 2 different things, but certainly you would not have to start from scratch. You could use those blog posts as lead-ins, if you will, for your various chapters.
Exactly. So that's what I think, what you mentioned, just to comprehend in a way that people can write blog posts and article, but that would be turned out to an event. However, a book would be a whole journey or a story in that event.
Right.
So as you mentioned,
and also sure. And then the other thing that a book does for you that a blog post will not is it elevates you. I like to have people say, well, what do you want the book to do for you? We talk about what do you want it to do for the readers, but then what do you want it to do for you? So when you are a book author and you want to come on, let's say, a podcast such as yours, you can't come on your podcast and just talk about your business, right? Because that seems like it's selling, you're selling something. But when you have a book and you can talk about the book and you can talk about those topics and how that book helps people, automatically it raises you from being a salesperson to being an educator. You're educating people about your particular topic. So for the author, if you want to be a paid speaker, or if you want to do workshops, or if you want to become guests on shows and podcasts, that book then becomes an entry point to all of those things.
Yes, that makes sense. And I think those are some of the advanced step, if I think from the person who is planning to write a book. So let's try to get into place where, for example, I would like to write a book.
Mm-hmm.
What is my next step to get started? Because I think that next step is something which people misses out. Like, okay,
Yes.
now what? Okay, I have ideas.
Yes.
What's your suggestion for having at least first couple of moves to get
Yes.
started, which people can kind of further expand it?
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, the first thing you want to do is take an inventory of all the things that you know about, right? And intersect that with where your passion is. What do you want to be known for? And then once you figure that out, then you say, okay, are there people out there that are looking for that information? So I'll give you an example of a client that I'm currently working with. She is writing a book about the ecology, if you will, and trying to become more conscious of what we're doing in the world as far as recycling and reusing things. And so that's not her mainline job. She actually has a corporate job that's in a different field, but she has a passion about that because she actually, with her family, decided that they wanted to reduce their carbon footprint. And so she started doing a lot of research on how they could do that. So she's writing a book about how you can very slowly, not go all out, but very slowly, taking one room at a time, reduce your carbon footprint and reuse and recycle. So that's the first step I would tell people to do. Look at what you're passionate about, whether that is your mainline career or whether that is a hobby or something that you're just passionate about, and then figure out what problem you could help someone solve. In the case of this author, she is looking at people who, they're not on the far right of I have to get rid of everything and be natural for everything, right? But they want to do a little bit to reduce their carbon footprint. So that's her audience, somebody who they're very busy. They know they need to do something, but they're not sure where to start. So she's going to give them almost like an entire year of every month you can do one thing or tackle one room, and then you can help yourself be more ecologically savvy. So that's the first step I would say is to look at where your passions are, where your skills are, where your interests are, and then pick one thing, just one area that you could help. It makes it interesting. So adding things like your personal stories, case studies, if you have clients and you have case studies, or examples that people that you've worked with, or even people that you admire from afar. You mentioned Oprah early on, so you might bring in something that you learned from Oprah, right? And so that makes the book readable and makes the book interesting. And it also makes it unique because, as you said, only you have your experiences. No one else has those. And so the very fact that you write about those makes that book uniquely yours.
Exactly. So now next, let's move to the next step. So I have all the mindset about writing a book. I start writing. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, I would like to know what is the end-to-end process looks like. Like,
yes,
who are the people to approach? How do I write? And what are the intricacies involved in that? So if you can kind of briefly give us that perspective.
Sure. Well, I will just talk about the process that I use with my clients, and that. So after we do all that mindset and we figure out the target audience and all of that. Then I like to have people do a mind map, right? So a mind map is different from a table of contents because a table of contents is a sequential chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3. That sometimes stifles people because they get paralyzed. They're like, I'm not sure what I want to talk about first, second, and third. So I like to have them do a mind map. And that mind map is simply, what are all of the topics that I want to include in this book? Let's write them all down and how they relate to each other. And then when you're writing, you can just pick one of those topics and write about that topic. So you're not locked into, if I am not sure what I want to do in chapter 1, well, then I can just move to a different topic and write about that and come back to the chapter 1 later on. So as they're going through the writing process, I like to have them write as much as possible, just get it out of your head in that first draft, because that first draft is going to not look very good, right? It's not going to be perfect. And I tell people, don't try to edit it while you're writing. So don't, when we're writing, we tend to write a paragraph and then we'll read that paragraph and then we'll say, oh, I want to word that differently, and we'll rewrite it. That's bad news when you're trying to write a book. What you want to do is get all of the information out as much as possible in that first draft, and don't try to edit it at all. Just get all your thoughts out. And then the next step would be to go through an editing process and edit it and restructure it. So you would do that on your own. And then once we do that, then we would pull in a professional editor. So someone who knows grammar and sentence structure and sequencing, and have them go through it and polish it up for you. Then I like to pull in people who are in that target audience. So let's say the bed and breakfast owners for my first book, have them read the book and have them give you some information on whether it makes sense to them or not. Because, we have a lot of knowledge in our heads and we assume that people know something and maybe they don't. So having someone in your target audience reading that book will bring those things out and help you create then a stronger second draft. So once you get the second draft done, then you want to pull in a book layout person. So a book layout person, because, you don't want your book to look like you did it on Word, right, in your office. You want it to look professional. So a book has to have certain page numbers, margins, what they call front matter in the beginning of the book, and, all that other stuff. So you lay it out with a graphical design person who is specifically experienced in laying out books. Then we would pull in a cover designer, and the author can help with a vision of what they want that cover to look like. But there's also rules of, let's say you're going to have your book up on Amazon or the other online sites. And it's going to be in a thumbnail size. So you want, when it's shrunk down to a thumbnail size, you still want it to be readable. You want the cover to look good. You want your name to be visible. These are things that we can't think about because we're not graphics people. And so having a professional cover designer, as opposed to you trying to create something, again, in Photoshop, that's not a good thing, right? You want a professional cover designer. And it will save you a headache because your cover needs to wrap around your book. So it has to have the exact size and dimensions for the number of pages in your book. And that's the other thing that a cover designer will do. They will ensure that your cover fits perfectly around the pages of your book. And then once you do that, then you can load it up onto, let's say, a site like Amazon, which they have a complete process of creating an author account on Amazon, and then getting your book loaded and ready for sale on Amazon.
Oh, that's a great insight, actually. I didn't even know that all these process happen. So I think there are a couple of things which definitely people would like to get into. So how these publishers comes into the picture? I was reading somewhere there are different ways that publishers, or you can come into some of the big organizations, publishers, and they give some royalty or those kind of stuff. So do we have to get involved in that as well?
Well, that's one of the paths. So there's two paths. One path is what I would call traditional publishing, and that is with a publishing house. And the other path is self-publishing. Now, my clients, I work with them on self-publishing, but they're not mutually exclusive, right? You can self-publish first, and then you can always go to a traditional publisher. So with a traditional publisher, you first have to get an agent, a book agent, who will take on your book. And that agent, and you have to write like a summary of the book and what it was going to contain. You know, there's like a structure to that query, and you would give that to the agent, and then the agent would approach the various publishing houses and what they call shop your book around, right? Find a publisher that is interested in your book. Now, one of the drawbacks if you are a first-time author is that the publishing industry has gone through a lot of consolidations, just like every industry, and they are not quick to take on a unknown author. They want someone who already has an established platform, which means you have a large social media following. You probably already have press interviews and things like that. So you're already an established commodity, so that if they put their money behind you, they know they can get a return on their investment. Now, if they do take you on, they give you what is called an advance, which is money that is and what is truly an advance against sales. So let's say for a first-time author, that may be $10,000, right? So you get that $10,000 and you use it however you see fit, maybe to, help you write, or if you're going to take a sabbatical or something like that. And then, but that is truly an advance. So what happens is that the publishing houses they actually own what's called the rights to the book. They own the book, not you as the author. They will sell the book, so you get the advantage of their distribution and all of that, and then they pay you a royalty on sales. The typical royalty is 10%. So you have a $20 book, and you'll get $2 from that book as your royalty. So when you think about it, you have to sell a lot of books to make up that $10,000, right? If you're only getting $2 a book. And so many first-time authors never sell enough books to get that royalty, to pay off that royalty, and they never see any more money. Now, if you're somebody like a Tony Robbins and you're selling hundreds of thousands of books, you're going to make a lot of money. But again, as a first-time author, it's sometimes difficult to do that. Now there are some other avenues. There are what's called hybrid publishers, where you pay them a fee and they take on some of that risk. You don't usually get an advance, but you share more of the profits on the back end. And so there's a lot of different models like that. And then with self-publishing, you basically have to pay everything up front because you don't have that big publishing house paying those things for you. But on the back end, you get a larger royalty. So if you put your book on, let's say, in Amazon is more like a 60% royalty, and you own the rights. So you don't only have to sell on Amazon, you can sell on other places, right? And you can sell on your website. And if you go to a conference and you want to bring books to that conference and sell at the conference, you get all of the money from that book. So it's a bit more flexible, particularly for first-time authors. And then if you're very successful, you might get picked up by a traditional author. Marie Kondo, who's very famous for The Art of Tidying Up, she was originally a self-published author, and then her book was so successful that one of the large publishing houses picked it up and republished it. So it's not an either or, but I like self-publishing because the barriers to entry are much lower.
That's amazing. It's good information I got to know here, like how these publishing and these things work. Definitely, I would look into our podcast and make some notes, and I'm hopeful the viewers as well. So that being said, let's get to the concluding part of this. What would be your advice to the aspiring authors at this point? And there are two parts of this question. And the second thing is, if someone would like to reach out to you to be their book coach, how do they contact you?
Sure. Well, to answer your first question, I would say start reading some books in your area of interest, right? See what's out there. You don't even have to purchase the books if you don't want to. You can just get on Amazon and do a search. Amazon has an incredibly powerful search engine. So you can search on, let's say, leadership for women, all of that. And all of those books will come up, and look at what those books contain and see if there's an area where you feel like you could contribute to the conversation. So that's what I would say as a next step for someone who's thinking about writing a book, is just do some research in your local library, your local bookstore, or online or on Amazon, and see what else is out there. And then if people want to work with me, they can go to my website, expertauthor411.com/gift. And that will actually give you a little download. It's a workbook for those first few steps that we talked about, telling your story, looking at your target audience. It actually walks you through that process. And then if you want to have my help, then it also has a link to how you can reach me for more information.
Perfect. That's great. And all this information, I'll post it on the description below so that you can reach out to Linda as well. So, Linda, this conversation was pretty insightful, and frankly speaking, I learned a lot about book writing, and I'll definitely encourage anyone who are aspiring to be try to take that first step of writing something down, and then obviously you can kind of extend. And if you need Linda's help, please go ahead, and as all the information would be below, you can reach out to her as well. So Linda Griffins, thank you so much for this podcast.
Thank you, Sar. It was my pleasure. I had a lot of fun talking to you.